this weekend. Head coach Steve Sabins is here and ready for questions. Coach, if you'd like to start with an opening statement and then we will move along to questions, please raise your hand and we will go along as such. Coach, you might still be muted.
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
We got you now. You're good to go.
Cool. Well, excited. Found out yesterday that we're headed to Baton Rouge to take on LSU. Had a historic and incredibly fun weekend series in the regional when we got to take on Kentucky and Clemson, and very proud of how the team performed and how they played and stuck together. And for me, it was the best 3-game set that I've ever been part of as a player or a coach. It essentially had everything you could imagine when it came to excitement. I probably got some gray hairs cooking from that weekend, but there were so many individual heroic performances that took place, and incredible for a team that has won a Big 12 title outright and currently has the most wins in program history and went through a tougher spell at the end of the season to be able to refocus and bounce back and beat 2 very, very good teams and one team that's historic, one of the best teams in all of college baseball, and has some of the most College World Series appearances and wins all time. So excited about what our team did. You try to reflect and look back a little bit. We stayed up probably till 4 a.m. Monday morning and then jumped on a flight to get here. But we spent time as a staff. We spent time as players, and you look back and you try to reflect and you try to take some things in that just happened over that 3-game set. It was definitely a blur, but you do that because it's healthy and the kids deserve that. And then today is a day that we have to refocus and we have to get back to practicing and performing and figuring out how to beat LSU in a 3-game series, hopefully a 2-game series.
All right, we'll start questions off with Coach Hunt.
Steve, with just the health, Sam White, Brody Kresser, how'd you guys emerge health-wise and the toughness that they showed to fight their way through that, those injuries?
Good. Both those guys are not broken. They're extremely tough. Sam White has the nastiest bruise that I've ever seen on a human in his ribs. It is the size of a softball. It is blown up. It's black and blue. And he didn't feel it in the game when he got hit in the ribs. Coach Garcia was at first base and he asked Sam, he's like, dude, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm good. Like, it's like he didn't recognize that he had just been hit in the ribs by a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. And we were just concerned that his ribs were broken. Like, I don't know how his ribs aren't broken. Truthfully, it is, it's as swollen and nasty as it can get. The kid is an animal. He was a hockey goalie in Canada growing up his whole life. He was actually drafted into the AHL. I might be saying that wrong, but he was drafted into a hockey league out of high school. He could have started playing professional hockey. So he's just tough as nails. He's a dirt bag. He kind of enjoys a little bit of that pain. And then Kresser was blasted in the kneecap, the 95-mile-an-hour fastball, and kept playing and went through it. They're not feeling good today, I can assure you of that, but they're not broken to my knowledge. So we'll get back to practicing. Before we left for the regional, we got everybody in ice tubs and then hot tubs and ice tubs, and we called it Tubs for Dubs. And so Tubs for Dubs was successful. So we're gonna have to run that back with all these dudes that got annihilated over the weekend.
John Antonic.
Hey, I got a question for you here. I was at my morning coffee stop, and I handed the guy the card, and the guy says out of the blue, he says, "Damn, Little Rock almost did it for us." And going around the grocery stores and the stuff, do you get a sense of the excitement that people have for what you guys have done the last 2 years? Do your players get it? Do you see any of that? Are you feeling any of that? Or are you just kind of focusing on what you're doing?
Yeah, you saying it gives me goosebumps. We're in a bubble. We're certainly in a bubble, and you just work and you recruit, right? I was on a FaceTime call this morning trying to convince a kid from Pennsylvania in the portal why he needs to be a Mountaineer. So you get lost in this thing. But you saying it, I appreciate it. It doesn't go unnoticed. I think for me, the biggest thing probably difference is just after some of those wins, like you look at your phone and I have 189 text messages after a win. And you know a lot of folks, but you're going, man, if that many people want to personally reach out, that effect is just multiplied to every staff member and every like all of our team and players and everybody else. And so I'm so excited because I do think a lot of people were watching the Little Rock LSU games, and for this place to be the best, you do have to have a fan base, and you have to have support, and you have to have financial support, and you have to have all those things, but you have to understand what's going on. You have to understand what a regional format is and what a super regional is and how it matches up and what the College World Series is. And that's how you get people really invested. And the more people that we have invested in the place, the closer we are to being the best. And so I am getting that sense, and it makes me extremely proud to be part of it.
Thank you.
Kevin Kinder.
Hey, good morning, Coach.
Morning.
You kind of went all in in Sunday's game. Obviously, bringing Griffin in, but it seemed like you pulled out every stop that you could. Is that kind of your overall plan for this weekend? Also, if you would get a game one win, do you go all in game two? Do you try to hold something back for a potential game three, or does that just not fit? The kind of the character of this team.
Yeah, this week is easier to go all in. We did do that, and it's like anything. Like you have to take aggressive and intelligent risks for you to win, and that's what we did on Sunday multiple times. And so, like, it's crazy because you can push all your chips in, but then the score can change, and you have to like pull a couple back, which you can't do on the poker table. And so you can feel naked by doing that a few times. But then you tie the game and you push all the chips back in, right? And so it's definitely an interesting dynamic in that tournament format when you can survive to the next day. But this is essentially a 3-game series. So this is how we've played the entire season. So score does dictate pitching decisions, of course. But if you have a chance to win the game, in general, our philosophy has just been to be aggressive because we think our offense can score in bunches. And so you certainly don't want to ever give the team the feeling that you're going to play for tomorrow. So you have to keep going. You have to keep coming after people's throats. And the other team needs to feel that heat. And then great things can happen like it did in the regional.
Justin Jackson.
Hey, Coach. Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, Justin?
I'm good. Hey, I was just kind of wondering if you could kind of give us some details on the thought process that went through the decision to bring Grant off the bench. Might have been a difficult decision with him being a senior and the career he's had. Obviously, Ben paid off, on Sunday with the big game. So I'm just kind of wondering if you could just give us some details on how that whole process went down.
Yeah. So the question is why Grant didn't start the games?
Yes.
Okay. I think there's a multitude of factors. There's 1,000 reasons, and it's not isolated to Grant. I think that's where sometimes people get confused, where they think that it's decisions are made to a player. Decisions are made only and strictly for the team. And so what Grant brings to the table is experience, power, infield defense, and a unique ability to bunt as a big man. He normally has that. And so he brings a lot of other things off the field. He's a high character kid and a great teammate and everything else. But you're essentially taking his skill set versus the opposing pitching. And then you're having to make a decision on if there's another player that we think that's on our team, whether it's in the lineup or not in the lineup, that may be able to help us win the game more often. And so not to coach speak it, but I felt like in this circumstance, I think some people view like it's 1-for-1, like you take Grant out and you put in Ben Lumsden, but it's more complicated than that. It's not a 1 out, 1 in kind of thing, because you're building a lineup to try to maximize runs. So we also added Armani Guzman. So you're adding a speed player and you're adding a left-handed bat, whereas Swain maybe was a right-handed at bat. And so all those things are going into it. And then Hussey's performance versus left-handed pitching in game 1 helped us get a little bit closer to that decision that we thought somebody else may be a better option. But it's funny because even with Grant, he's not used to coming off the bench. And there's games moving forward, maybe Grant will start, or maybe Grant will come off the bench. And he hasn't been used to that. But by the end, he really turned the page, and that guy damn near hit a grand slam to tie the game in a regional. And it sure felt like that moment was drawn up for that man. He handled it like a pro and performed at a high level. And we need him at first base, especially later in the games. If I want to take some risks and think that there might be a better bat matchup earlier offensively, the risk is that we could, struggle defensively. So that's where you saw, like in 4th or 5th innings, if we had a tie game, you have to put Grant in the game because he's such an excellent defender. You're not playing for defense, but Grant's a great offensive player too. It's just, it is risky. But sometimes, like in these scenarios, when you're going up against really great teams, you just have to maximize everything you got, every bullet that you can pull out, you try to. And so I thought Ben Lumsden gave us the best chance offensively in some of those places.
And then obviously the matchup with LSU, they started off their regional with 2 shutouts, Ianson and Anderson, 2 great starting pitching performances by them. The ERA is top 10 in the country. Just what do you see? What's the challenge there with facing that LSU pitching staff?
It'll be a challenge. It'll be a challenge in every area. They are a top program in the nation and have been that way for 100 years. They have the best resources, the most NIL. They have the biggest scholarships, the biggest fan base, the biggest TV deals, awesome network coverage, great coaching staffs, on and on and on. And so I think whether it's the pitching staff or the offense or the base running, you just have to prepare accordingly. And you go in knowing that these are all 18 to 24-year-old kids that grew up playing on the same baseball circuit, and they have similar skill sets, and they chose those players to play for LSU, and I chose my dudes to play for West Virginia. And so the fun part is that all that extra stuff, like whatever LSU did and last year or the previous year or their history or their accolades, none of that stuff matters once you get in between the lines. It's literally who can execute pitches and win pitches and have great at bats. And so we're in an awesome situation going to LSU. And I was thankful we played at Clemson because I thought that environment at Clemson was loud and pretty ruckus. And you had those kids in the bullpen that were like touching our guys warming up. It was a mess. But I thought as far as like environments, our home environment is so good now. The Clemson environment was great. So I think our guys will be prepared in that avenue. And so pitching wise, I haven't looked at those particular starters, but we'll build a game plan. We'll have an approach. We'll figure out how to beat those guys. That's always what we do with every pitcher.
One last one real quick. Obviously Little Rock small school, losing record going into the tournament, nearly pulls off the monumental upset, beat them on Sunday. How much of that I mean, obviously your players already know that and probably saw the game last night, but how much of what Little Rock almost accomplished do you kind of put into your message to your team leading into the game or the series, I guess?
Mhm. I probably won't, just because we don't focus on the opposing teams very much. I think by now, when you're one of the final 16 teams playing in the nation, you're not trying to convince guys that you can beat somebody. If you're still trying to convince your team that you can win a game, you probably aren't playing any longer. These guys know that they can beat anybody in the country and that they're going to match up with anybody in the country. It's just whether they do on that particular day or if they execute at a high level on that particular day. And so, and sure, Little Rock is certainly proof, and psychologically for LSU, right? You have to figure out, they'll figure out how strong they are mentally, right? If losing a game to Little Rock and having a tight game, if that affects them mentally or their confidence, and that's always the challenge of every team. You want to make sure your guys stay really tough and mentally strong throughout the season. And sometimes when you get some cracks in your armor, it can create self-doubt, and you want to make sure your teams don't do that. But our team will go in to anybody that we play for the remainder of the season, believing that we can win the game if we play good baseball.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Quinn Roby.
Hey, Coach. You got a lot of production from your 7, 8, and 9 hitters, and then specifically in that last game with Brody and Armani. What does that mean going into this super regional win? You might have to find different guys like that to get you that production.
Yeah, that was insane. I always laugh like at the end of every season. There was one season where Zach Ottinger and Ryan Berger threw a complete game or a one hitter in a Big 12 tournament game, and they'd only thrown like 5 innings or 6 innings all year. And so, like, if you do decide to put somebody in a great situation and they have success, it's the best feeling ever. But on the other side, it's like yin and yang. It's always like, where the hell's Guzman been all year? Why haven't you been playing that dude? Or like, right. And so it's always about these individual growth moments throughout the year that you believe that somebody's ready to really impact the game. And so same thing with lineup, like you're referring to. Well, if your 7 through 9 hole hitters, are hitting 850 and winning regionals, like, should those guys be your 1 through 3 hole hitters? What the hell are you doing? So there's always like a balance of just trying to keep it in perspective. Like, they had a great week and we love what they do, and then the familiarity of where you hit in that lineup. But it was incredible. Like, I hadn't really seen much like that before. Guzman was the 9-hole hitter the entire week, and he was the tournament MVP and by far the best player on the field. It's a non-contest. And so I would guess we need Antonic on this sucker. I bet there's never been a 9-hole hitter been a tournament MVP. I would imagine that's probably the case. So what he did was epic, and then the guy hadn't started for 6 weeks. So it even makes it crazier. And his mentality has been so spot on. Like, you want to talk about a confident guy that's not arrogant. I think when he won the walk-off, when he walked off Kentucky game 1, he hit a ball off the cap a little bit, and we ended up scoring and walking it off. And he said it was a slider that hung away from him, and he got it off the cap a little bit. He's like, if it would have broke more into my bat, I would have hit a homer. I was like, oh, and he's like, no, I was like, seriously. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so he really truthfully knew that if the guy would have done something different with the slider, he would have hit a homer. And he wasn't being cocky, he wasn't being arrogant. He just is in such a strong place competing right now that he knows that he'll have success. And so as a 9-hole with the limited experience, pretty cool.
Mike Casaza.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm great, thank you. I kind of have a state of the sports question, if that's all right. But
Yeah.
the way the college sports scene has changed, and really kind of encouraged football, basketball to become national sports with conferences are crazy, rivalries are gone, recruiting, roster building, all that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but baseball has by and large been a regional sport. Do you sense that that could change? And because it does seem so important with how you recruit and do midweek series and non-conference play, but just seems like all the forces are pushing it away from something regional and something national.
Help me out. Are you referring to more like on the recruiting side, Mike, or
Just
like
look at
the
like
scheduling side?
yeah, because like recruits in those other two sports come from everywhere now because they're NIL chasing money and like the
Yeah.
conferences are huge and all that stuff. But you just last week were talking about you would take a regional kid before somebody else who's from further away, and you guys just played in a regional. You're playing in a super regional.
Yeah.
Geography's
No, I
really
got it. I got it. Yeah, it's funny. Like the most beautiful thing about baseball by far is the difficulty in the evaluation of talent. So the talent side matters, but it's not football. The fastest dude wins in football. And psychologically and emotionally, there's so much that's hard to evaluate in baseball players. So, for example, like when you're watching that regional, you're watching the highest end pitchers in the country, quote unquote, the highest end pitchers in the country, and some of them melting on the mound. They're having psychological moments and they're sweating and they can't throw strikes and they're taking deep breaths and they're praying. And so there's like, right, that doesn't happen in football. Like if you can run faster and turn left, like you have to catch the ball. But in baseball, it's so fine-tuned, right? You're trying to hit a ball that's going 97 miles an hour with arm side run, and it might hit you in the neck or it might be a strike, and you got to put an aluminum sphere on the thing. And so there's like, it's so difficult to evaluate who's going to perform at these highest levels in these biggest moments that you can go get the national recruit that like is ranked by some guy that's not as good at evaluating talent as myself or our staff and say like, hey, we landed a top 50 recruit from California and he won a state championship, but it doesn't matter. Like it truly doesn't matter. So like when people write about recruiting rankings in baseball or how West Virginia landed this or we should be landing these guys or whatever, they literally have no idea what they're talking about. They are extremely confused on how this process works and how the development of baseball players happen. So in general, you're trying to like harness people and harness these players into becoming really great talents. Like they have the talent, but more importantly, you're having to like nurture them so they mentally can handle this brutal sport where you fail all the time and everybody says you suck most of your career. And so the regional piece is like providing a support system of family close, and the regional piece is providing familiarity in an area, and you grew up with pride, maybe rooting for the Mountaineers and all these other factors that matter other than like, hey, you can crush a ball. When you're dealing with these young kids, you have to have like truly a all-encompassing, holistic approach of getting them so they can compete in big moments. So you have to have the talent, but I still am all in on, yeah, well, I mean, we sign kids from California and everywhere else. Like we're going to recruit nationally. But when in doubt, if you can get a kid that is close to home and thinks this is a great fit and wants to develop inside of our organization and has some familiarity, it's always going to be better because it's a stepping stool kind of process to becoming a big leaguer. And going away from home is hard, so you might as well not do it across the country. And competing for a top 25 program is hard, so you might as well do it a little closer home with coaches you trust. And being motivated every day to work the way we work is hard, so you might as well do it for a program that you grew up rooting for, right? So there's like, I know I get long-winded on these answers, but it's just, it truly isn't basketball or football. It's not like a plug and play. This guy jumps higher, runs faster, blocks harder kind of sport.
Okay, that was good. That kind of answers most of this, but I don't know that this is your goal to be like the most, I don't know, successful, visible, relevant team in the Northeast. But let's say that's an outcome, and that, a month from
Yeah.
now, a year from now, 2 years from now, you are that. What does that open as far as like windows and possibilities for what you want to do and what you all can become?
I want every high school star player that wants to play at an elite program from within this region to come to West Virginia and not think that they need to take their talents and mentality to a different school because we don't have what's needed to win at the highest levels or to develop big leaguers. So that would be number one. Number two, you want every player that went to a university and that had success and has a proven track record of success that wants to play at the highest level to transfer and come play at West Virginia. Those are probably the two main goals. The visibility piece is just I mean, you can become more visible by gimmicks and doing TikTok videos, or you can become more visible by a consistent track record of success and development of players. So I obviously prefer option B.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
John Raby.
Coach, you mentioned the tough going in the past month. How did things start to work when they weren't working before? Was it a combination of things, telling the guys to clear their heads, getting a new mindset? What's moves that you might have made? What's different now than maybe a month ago?
I I laugh just as I get long-winded in these interviews because we think about these things a lot and we do a lot of things, and there's we talk about there being 96 people in our organization, and we talk about this team, being a coal train, and that every person is a part of the coal train and every person is a car of this, and we're all trying to move forward, and you build momentum together, and if something gets off the tracks, it can wreck the entire train. And so I think for me to sit and answer exactly why it got back on the tracks and why guys are moving forward and feeling really good about showing up and playing every day probably wouldn't be fair, because I think that there's 96 individuals that go to bed every night trying to figure out how to make this the most successful and best team in the country. And so did I have my piece? Yeah, we threw things into a fire and we started over, and we had rebirths and team meetings and individual meetings and video reviews, and sent guys highlight films and went to steak dinners and got in cold tubs and set up massages and practiced hard and practiced light and practiced in pants and practiced in shorts and practiced with no shirts and practiced with shirts, and we did everything in between, right? So you try to keep it light and intense at the same time, and you try to push the right buttons every step of the way.
Tell me what the difference is between going to the super regional as a coach versus maybe a year ago when, you weren't at the helm of everything. So what's it different now this time?
I don't have as much time to talk to transfer portal kids on FaceTime calls, but I still try to get that in. Just the decisions, you have to take a lot of time thinking about things that you want to do and how you're going to win games. And so I've always been a little bit more of a taskmaster. If there's things that need to be done, I do those things. I'm type A personality. I recruit, I stay on things, I'm organized, I schedule effectively. And for me, getting away from all of that to actually think is probably the biggest change. So I have to schedule some time to sit and think about our players and think about the roster and think about the pitching. There's nothing to be done. You have to really prepare mentally. So when moments come up in games, you have a plan for what you may want to do in those moments. I think more experienced head coaches have been in all sorts of moments. And so they've lived those moments and they've had success and they've had failures, and you learn from that. That's the benefit of experience. But when you don't have experience making the decisions, you have to spend a lot of time before those decisions come up thinking about what may or may happen with the decisions that you make. So you essentially are playing games in your head before games happen, but there's so many variables and twists and turns in baseball games that you can only cover so much. So I would say that's probably the biggest difference from being an assistant coach to a head coach, is just obviously it's the decision making in game that takes place, and then the time that it takes and is required to prepare for those decisions.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Kevin Kinder.
Coach, the one guy that seems to encapsulate a lot of what you've talked about over the last 20 minutes is Ben Lumsden. A starter most of the season last year, accepts a role this year, obviously could have gone in the tank, comes in with 4 hits, has a monster weekend for you. Is that like someone that you hold up to say, hey, here is the example of everything that this program is about?
Ben Lumsden and Armani Guzman, man. That's what this is about. Like, that's what college sports and competing is about. Currently, it's very easy to run when things don't go your way. It's extremely easy to run, to quit, to think the grass is greener, and young people have a decision to make, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for young people to make the decision to put your feet in, dig in, get better. Don't blame others. It's not a leadership issue. It could be a you issue. You need to get better. And for young people to look themselves in the mirror and decide what they need to do to get better is incredible. And that's what those young men did. And then to get your opportunity after doing that and having success, you can't draw it up better. It doesn't always work that way. Unfortunately, you can look yourself in the mirror, you can work, you can earn an opportunity, and then you can suck and lose that opportunity. And so they bought into the fact that regardless of results, the only path forward is to work and to look at themselves. And so, yeah, you just nailed it. Like, those guys are going to be on a pedestal forever. And when you have exit meetings and when you call players in here, and when I'm talking to freshmen that are redshirted and they're deciding if they want to stay or not, my message is not begging anybody to stay. It's, hey, this thing's really hard. This is the most difficult thing that you're ever going to do. Armani Guzman's going to play in the big leagues, and he's a spot starter. And so I don't want to hear any of your shit. If you want to get better and you want to earn something here, you can earn it. And so, like, those guys bring tears to my eyes, Lumsden and Guzman, what they've done. And Ben Lumsden, in the middle of the year, we had a meeting, and I was like, you want to be here? And he's like, do you want me here? And I was like, yeah, I want you here. You just got to get better. You're not good enough to get on the field right now. And he swallowed his pride. That's hard to hear. A guy who was a stud last year, that guy's got a pro future too. If he keeps getting better. And so he swallowed his pride and he went and worked harder than that guy's ever worked before. And that's what this is about. Like, it's not easy. You have to work harder than everybody else. LSU's got good players. Texas has got good players. Kentucky, guess what? They got really good players. They got good resources. People don't choose West Virginia over some of those traditional powers all the time. We're not going to be better than them by working half as hard. That's for damn sure. And so those kids, man, personify what we're about. Kevin, you nailed it.
All right, final question, Mike Casazza.
Steve, your travel roster's 27, I believe, right? Are you allowed to make changes to that in between? You can doctor it for a different opponent, different regional, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Are you committed to like 14 of one and 13 of the other pitchers' batters? Does it depend on, maybe 5 games in a regional versus 3 in a super regional? Like, how does that work? Does it change at all? Is that like a science this time of year?
Yeah, that's one of those you're living with me, Mike. That's one of those meditations questions I need to figure out while I'm thinking. That's what we did this week. We traveled 28 guys. So things happen throughout the season. Like if we were to have some injuries over the regional, we could put somebody else on the roster. I might be calling somebody from summer ball, be like, hey, I know you're enjoying playing in the Valley League right now, but we need you in Baton Rouge. So I'm not committed to that. I do feel like if I had to do it again for the regional going into that 4th or 5th game, you would need to put every pitcher that you have on the roster, because if you're in the losers bracket of that regional and you have to play 5 games, right, you're asking Guzman to start pitching for you. So I think more pitching in general for that tournament format, but when it comes to the super regional, it's only a 3-game set. I would feel more comfortable. Like you probably won't end up pitching more than 8 to 10 guys. If you're throwing more than 10 pitchers in a 3-game set, things didn't go well for you.
Okay. And then can you kind of take us inside the lines a little bit, just watching from, in person this year and then especially on TV now? It just seems amped up on the regional, the amount of talking between the teams and competitive, I guess, but maybe there's some animosity there too. But I don't know, as a manager, it's a game, they're having fun, they probably know each other from different levels. Do you keep an eye on it? Do you keep a lid on it, or you just let you guys be your guys and that's up to the umpires and do what they do?
I lean towards up to the umpires. We're going to talk to the team today. There's a difference between like competing and fighting, and everybody's personality is different. So some guys need that external motivation or that battle to really play their best. Other guys don't. I just don't want it to ever go from that to selfish intentions. You can see players do certain things that is about drawing attention to themselves. Like they're going to say something or do something, or that's going to draw attention to themselves because they want more attention. And so I'm always about diverting any of that to, we're going to get attention together as a team by performing well. And so there's just been like throughout that regional, there was on opposing teams and our team, there was 3 or 4 instances where it felt like I was watching a bad Instagram video. Like this guy wants to be famous for something other than winning the game. This guy wants to be the center of attention in this moment. So like if somebody's barking at each other or competing or trying to get somebody to fold, like I'm perfectly fine with that. One example of that is that when we started the Clemson game, our guys were really chippy with the starting pitcher. They were kind of getting after him a little bit and trying to get him to waver. And the umpire came over to me and told me that we needed, to stay with our guys and not say anything to the opposing pitcher. And I was upset at that. I barked at him pretty good because I asked him to look around the stadium because there was 8,000 Clemson fans. And I asked him to look in the bullpen because there were drunk guys screaming, everything you could imagine to our team. I said, let's not concentrate on the 20 guys in our dugout, right? Like they're going to do what they need to do to compete at a high level. It was chippy. I think that's just the nature of it. And as a coach, you're always just trying to get your guys to focus on what matters. Like, I hope you don't need the external motivation. I hope you can root for your teammates, play really hard, and be satisfied with the team performing well.
All right, with no follow-up questions or anything like that, that'll conclude today's press conference availability. Thank you, Coach, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Charles.